Oh, hello, world. Welcome to Comic Book News. It's me, your old pal, Dan Shahin. Man, we got stuff to talk about. Originally, this was just going to be a strictly nerds-only show to talk about ComicHub, and ManageComics, two official Gem Mint 10 sponsors of this show. Just so you know, these guys pay money to help sponsor the show because they know a lot of comic book retailers and people in the industry that watch the show. And that, despite the fact that they're paying, I want to be as objective as possible and talk about as many systems as possible. These are just two of the systems. I got a bunch of other comic book software and other type of software vendors lined up for demos and stuff down the road and panels and all that stuff. I want to hear from you. If you're somebody, if you use a system that we have not talked about or mentioned on this show, hey, write to me. Write to Dan at comicbooknews.com comicbooknews@danshahin.com. Sorry. And let me know about it. I'll feature you on the show. So tonight, besides that stuff, we're going to talk about what's the other elephant in the room, the DC layoffs. So we'll be talking about the massive layoffs that happened across AT&T, which is Warner Brothers, which is also DC Comics. A lot of really top key players lost their jobs and dramatically downsizing the output and really shifting the focus of where DC is going in the near and the long term, I think. I don't want to say I told you so, but I've been pointing towards these changes that DC is making a pivot away from the direct market and towards the book trade. And I think that, all the tea leaves are pretty easy to read right now. And that seems to be what's unfolding. But hey, don't take my word for it. I got a panel full of smart people that work in this industry, that have worked in this industry for a long time and know a lot of things. So I want to bring in, first of all, my local buddy, Mike Hansen. Mike is a freelance book researcher, worked for a bunch of different companies. And Mike, tell the folks a little bit about what you do.
I'm a books researcher. Most of my work right now is for Marvel. I put together the contents of a lot of their graphic novels, including all of the Star Wars Epic collections. I used to be an editor for Dark Horse years ago. I was the manga line editor for 2 years. And I've just kept one foot in comics as I've pursued my creative career. So happy to be here.
Great. Thanks for joining us. We'll always appreciate your perspective and your comments. Next, I want to bring in a really good friend of mine, my former comic book guy. When I lived in San Francisco, Leef Smith of Mission Comics. Welcome back to Comic Book News, Leef.
Hey, guys.
Hey, man. Oh, man. Dramatically better internet connection and lighting this time around, Leef. So thanks a lot for joining us. Let me bring in the rest of our panel, and then we'll get started with this thing. Next, I want to bring in, which one should I bring in first? I don't know if anybody's ever noticed, but in the title cards every week, I switch the order in which I show which card first. Is it ManageComics or is it ComicHub? Well, I'm going to flip a coin right now, and I'm going to bring in Stu Colson from ComicHub. Stu, welcome back.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for having me back. Mike, nice to see you. Leef, well done.
Hi, Stu.
Coming on. Hi, guys.
Thanks for being here. And last, certainly not least, Brian Garside, ManageComics. Welcome.
See, and that's why Stu's my mortal enemy, right there. You do that kind of stuff. You stoke the fire, Dan.
Well, see, now that we're all home quarantined, this is the only way this could happen because everybody knows if you got these two in the same room, only one of them would leave, right?
We'd have to spontaneously implode because we're on opposite sides of the planet, right?
Oh, that's true. It might be like an antimatter situation.
Although we're both dirty socialists, so we got that going for us.
We'd probably be really good friends, Brian. I'm sure we'd have a few drinks together.
I think we'd be
I can
fine.
play Mortal Enemy if you want to be Mortal Enemy. That's fine by me. Yeah.
Oh, man. Late joiner. I'm super glad to welcome back to this show right now from Arsenal Comics and Games and the Comic Book Shopping Network, our buddy Timmy Haig.
Hey,
Timmy.
guys. Good evening.
Hey, Timmy.
Everybody.
Hey, welcome back. I know you're busy. You got comics to flip in real life and online. So we're going to get right into this stuff. And if you got to bail early, you got to bail. So
I appreciate that. Yeah,
a lot of flipping. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm having to hire 3 more people. It is the best, worst thing ever.
Here's my Swamp Thing #1.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
I bought off of one of Timmy's shows. He just showed it. He talked a little about it. Not a hard sell. This comic sells itself, especially at the amazing price I got it from Timmy. We're going to be seeing a lot more of the Comic Book Shopping Network coming up, guys. I'm not going to spoil his secrets right now. We got too much news and hard news and technology to cover tonight. So let's jump right into it. Our first topic of the night. Oh, by the way, guys, sorry. So super chats and chats, right? Like you can super chat all you want. I'll gladly take that money. I appreciate it. But we're honestly not looking at the comments until the end, right? For now, they can't even see the comments, and I'm not going to be paying very much attention to them at all until the end at our Q&A section, when I promise I'll go through them all. All right, we'll look at them all. We'll answer them. As long as it's not creepy or obnoxious, we'll get into it. And maybe even if it is, frankly, sometimes those are the most fun. So let's get into tonight's topic. Let's talk about the DC situation, right? So in brief, major layoffs across. We lost Hank Canals. We lost Bob Harris, editor-in-chief. I mean, we lost the whole humongous pieces. Some people were promoted. Some are gone. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but the fella in charge of the Black Label Initiative,
Mark Doyle.
Okay, yeah, right. And then it seems like a pivot towards more, as I've been saying for months on this show, DC editorial seems to be pivoting towards a young adult bookstore model. I don't think that's the wrong choice. I don't know that I think that's the right strategy, but maybe they're not employing the right tactics. But I want to know what you guys think. Let's start off with first, let's back it up a second. DC left Diamond Comic Distributors rather abruptly, set up their own new couple of distributors that initially were regional exclusives, and now supposedly anybody can order from either of them. I just want to hear from first. Let's go with Timmy first, because I know he's got schedule issues. What's been your situation distributor-wise and your feeling about the new normal?
Nothing's really changed for me to where I'm going to complain like a lot of fellow retailers. I chose Lunar because at the time they were regional. So, I selected them. And when they first started, there was some shipping issues in the sense of it would just kind of show up either before the weekend or even the day of or the day after the Tuesday release. And this is when the shops were still closed. So I had to sell these comics via mail order or curbside. So it wasn't do or die, but it was still frustrating. My stores opened Memorial Day weekend, and by then Lunar really got it figured out for me anyway. I still hear issues here and there. But yeah, I have no complaints. They pack the stuff well. Everyone's new big complaint is that they do Sunday FOC. I do my FOCs on a Sunday anyway, so it made no difference for me. Yeah, I got really no complaints about it all, the Lunar thing. I like the people at DC plenty. I like the people at Diamond plenty. I understand I've always understood with Diamond, the warehouse logistics. The warehouse guys are not the people up above. So it's like, I know a lot of people like to yell at their reps.
Sure.
Or get mad at Chris or other people, but it's two separate things, Let
me ask you one question though, Timmy. Yeah. Would you have preferred though if you still had a choice to go with Lunar and still be able to get stuff from Diamond, DC stuff from Diamond? I mean,
of course, that 2-3 week window where I was ordering from both was really interesting because Catwoman 80th came out in that time span. And I still had all my orders with Diamond because, it just makes sense to do it all with one place, if it's level playing ground and, I'm used to Diamond, but I double dipped and used Lunar at the same time because they could get me. Catwoman did better for me than I expected because it was kind of like this with those 80th anniversary specials and milestone anniversaries for the last year for me because there's been a lot of them, so there's been hits and misses. So I ordered conservatively on Catwoman. Thanks to ComicHub, I was able to tell by Monday what I needed more of and what'd been selling better than others with pre-orders. So I then knew that Lunar would get it to me sooner than Diamond would. So I did Lunar, and I was getting really used to that, and I enjoyed that. But then, of course, that got taken away. So it's not been the end of the world. So yeah, I'm all about Lunar. I won't complain if they ever go back to Diamond. But I would like the option of both. I think that's preferred. Because we never really got to experience both long enough to the point of like that hot item of the week. Can one distributor have it longer than the other? Oh, hey, this person's out. Can I get it from the other guy? We never really got to experience that. I know all the old timers did in the 90s when there was, all the multiple Capital Heroes world. So it'd be cool to have that, because I do that with gaming product, like, oh, hey, this distributor's already out of the newest Magic set. Yeah. No worries. I got 2 to 3 other choices.
Yeah, it's common, much more common in the gaming world for sure.
Yeah.
Timmy, thanks for that perspective. Yeah. Leaf, tell me about what's your distro situation been like since post-DC.
I have complaints. My biggest complaint is reorders. The ability to get product that people want. The situation has changed where my customers are not coming in every Wednesday. They're coming in once a month, every 5-6 weeks. They're asking for their comics to be mailed to them. They're slow to the game. And in this new paradigm, the new distributors don't have product. Where in the past, Diamond had enough storage facility to hold back stock, and I don't believe that actually, DCBS or Midtown actually has the physical storage capacity to hold back stock, and that's a huge problem, particularly for items that my customers want, and I'm not able to give them that.
Right. Okay. I want to go. Let me go to Brian. Brian, tell me what's been the effect like on your operations and your customers with the abruptness, the speed of the changeover from DC to these 2 new regionals.
Well, I mean, Lunar and UCS, neither one of them were really prepared from a data perspective for like a modern comic store, and the fact that we have data needs that you didn't have 10, 15 years ago. So that was a big deal. There were logistics problems. Like I'm sure Stu's having problems in New Zealand, in Canada here. You heard last week from Brandon, the problems that Canadians have. We've got a solution now up here. But yeah, it was just so abrupt and so quick. And then there's, just data things that nobody was thinking about. And by the way, the December 31st deadline when Diamond stops giving series codes to DC products is fast approaching, right? Like December will be here before we know it. And that's going to affect a lot of places if they're not preparing for it now.
Sure, but I'm sure they can just drop that change overnight, and everybody will
just change it.
Right now, no problems there. Good. Oh, Stu, why don't you tell me what has been the effect, and what do you foresee the effect being on ComicHub customers?
For our store, Brian mentioned the New Zealand part. I mean, the only thing that really worked for us is no store in New Zealand had it. So there were delays getting some shipments through. We were without DC for about 3 weeks, but we calmed all our customers down, and it eventually arrived, and we processed it all, so it was fine. Lunar's packing is out of this world for comics. I mean, I am so impressed with the lack of damages and such, and the accuracy of the shipments. I think we've had 2 comics short and 1 overshipped in the entire time. So that side's great. And mirror everything Brian said. There just simply wasn't enough preparation in what's going to happen with the data. And there was a lot of things that everyone needed. So we've taken that upon ourselves to provide a solution, and we will be giving Brian his own login in a couple of weeks as well. But we've set up a system where any publisher, any self-publisher creator can now create their own series code, and we're going to use all the numbers above 900,000. We've told Diamond that's what we're doing. and anyone can then create a series code. Brian can log in and just pick it up, and he just goes in once a week and it'll just show all the newest codes, and it's all sorted and solved, because it was a problem that no one seemed to be really looking at properly. We had the resources, we have the ability for publishers to be creating subscriptions or series and items, so we're just going to create a portal and anyone can just drop in and grab it and solve, because it's too big a problem to just continue to wait with nothing being said. So we've got our new app coming out in about 8 hours. Tomorrow we'll be pushing onto the supplier side of things as well. So anyone in the industry, and that'll include, we'll give, is it Django up in Washington area there, we'll give him a login so he can supply all the Moby people as well. So it's not going to be a problem. The data, any new codes can be created from there and sorted, and we're away. But as Brian said, it's far too important to wait till December for a solution. So we've built it. Yay.
But dude, why not just freeze out these other guys who don't have their act together? Like, why does it help you? Because
the series code is ubiquitous. The series code can't be messed with. It would just create it creates too many problems, and also we wouldn't get the buy-in. So if we actually said to publishers, hey, look, we've solved this. There's this problem that DC's brought up. We had someone creating this data who no longer has the ability to provide it to all of us or whatever, or the tools for it. You've got other independent publishers who won't be using Diamond at some stage, or new publishers coming on board that need a solution. So the what we've built only works if there's buy-in from the people using it, and the best way to do that is to say, hey, look, Brian wants this solved, I've solved it for him. Anyone else, Moby users want this solved, and hey, Diamond, I've solved it for you for your own Comic Suite system. Yeah, so there you go. That's the big deal. Everyone has to have that number unique. It's not a charge thing. It's just, you just log in and it will show you all the new codes that have been created since the last time you logged in, and you download them in CSV, JSON, or whatever file format you want, and import it into your own systems, and we're sorted. So yeah, done. Cool.
Fantastic.
Brian, you can thank me as a mortal enemy. You can go, oh, thanks, Stu.
You're too nice to be a mortal enemy.
Yeah, Canadians and Kiwis, we just can't fight. Come on.
Okay, Mike Hansen, I know this is that question is probably not one that that you have much stake in, but do you have any maybe questions about that, or we can move right into the next topic and you can go first on the next part of this thing?
Well, you're right, Dan. I am not a tech guy. That is not my part of the biz at all, but I can only speak to my experience dealing with discount comic book service / in-stock trades and Midtown Comics. Now, I get all of my Marvel comps from Midtown. They fulfill all of those for Marvel freelancers like me, and they're usually pretty well behind on when I receive my books. Like, usually it's been out in stores and in other people's hands for months before I see my copy, so I can see if it looks the way I was expecting it to. So that's a little unfortunate. But there's a lot of behind the scenes reasons for that with the pandemic and Marvel too. So, it is what it is. As far as discount comic book service and in-stock trades, I do occasionally order from them. Sorry to my local retailers, but I'm not stepping foot inside many stores these days. But I will say that their packaging is impeccable. I agree with these guys on that, with both the bubble wrap and the way that they shrink wrap your order in separate chunks, which is a really good way to prevent corner damage. And the only time I see flaws with that is when they're trying to shrink wrap books that are different sizes into the same little pile, and then you might see some corner dings. But about 98% of the time, they're great in that regard. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Bill Shannis last week brought up the fact that the addition of the bubble wrap is nice, but in the fact that means you can pack less books per box, and the price that you pay for the first pound on a box being significantly lower than the other pounds means that there's a cost. There's definitely a cost to that space taken up by that bubble wrap. But
it's not very environmentally friendly either.
There's that. And there's also the fact that there's just different people have different options for shipping and always have. There's sort of been always there's been this class of people that have the ability to get things either maybe pick up from a warehouse, which dramatically changes their whole shipping cost structure, or like I did, I was able to get stuff on a single pallet drop shipped by another shipping company, and damages were virtually non-existent because all of my boxes came shrink wrapped on a giant pallet as one unit. So I think, but that brought the cost and the damages down. And to me, that's the big advantage towards being able to consolidate all your orders through Diamond and get to a larger volume to be able to ship at that level.
I will say I do like the bubble wrap more than the styrofoam peanuts they used to use. I think those might have been even worse for the environment. I've still got boxes of styrofoam peanuts that I'm just waiting to reuse when I mail packages because I don't want to just throw them away.
It might actually be cornstarch and will wash down your sink. I know some suppliers we did have some like that, and we reuse the bubble wrap as well for our shipping. So
I think they switched to cornstarch at Diamond at some point, but yeah, those things stink too. Everybody hates them.
Yeah.
Real quick though, on what Leef was saying about storage with Lunar. The question I want to ask everyone is it storage or is it print runs? Because I really feel like every publisher, since things started backing up into production and printing, I have not had a single comic, single issue that if I looked, at my rack or my stock levels on Hub and a customer has asked for it after we sold out, and I'm not talking like the big hot books that are like speculative driven. So it's like, of course, they're sold out on distribution level. But even just like random things here and there, they've all been on back order, meaning out of print or, no longer available, etc. So a part of me doesn't know if it's a storage issue or it's just every publisher is doing as small print runs as possible in these crazy.
That's it. I mean, that's it.
You look at what Boom were doing last year. They were getting up to 8th printing on some of their books. And the only way you're doing that is if you're banging out, 1,000 copies. You're not getting to an 8th printing doing 10,000 copies every time. So there's clearly a print mechanism for, let's do a yellow background on the cover and bang out another 800 copies. And it's obviously profitable. So if maybe they can start to look at that, if it is storage, if that's the issue for holding a big print run. But if the book's hot and people want to read it, then go to 2nd, 3rd printings and do low runs on them. It's crazy.
That's what it is.
Money on the table.
I don't think there's any appetite for overprinting by anybody.
And there shouldn't be, because it's just waste, right? If you don't go through the overprint, that's another example of industry waste. But 2nd and 3rd printings when people want it isn't. You're printing essentially almost to order.
Okay. But it's a big change for DC where we could get restocks 3-4 weeks out of publication date. And now books are sold out on delivery. It's the problem.
Is that a casualty of COVID though, Leef? I mean, we all have to be more efficient.
No one's communicating. Nobody's talking.
Yeah.
I think it might be more than that because I'm seeing, underprinting in a lot of cases, not just in comics, but in physical media in general. Like last year's Prince box set sold out the day it came out, and all of a sudden it's worth 3-4 times what people paid for back then. And when publishers are not anticipating the demand, I think that they do need to have some kind of contingency plan for that beyond, well, if we printed up another 100, we're going to lose money on that. Well, print another 100 at the start just in case, because there's going to be damages and there's going to be issues.
Well, there's always that. Yeah. There's always that kind of overprinting, but then also they should be able to realize based on certain titles anticipating heat and do a certain amount of overprinting because it makes sense and is efficient for them to do it at that time. But to Stu's point, to print just like a few hundred copies or a few thousand copies, the economics, this was pointed out to me recently, it's very different for the big players because they print so many titles, they can gang things up in print runs. Mm-hmm. And while they're banging out a full print run of something else, they just throw a couple more new covers on and guts for an additional issue, for an existing issue. So the economics are quite different. They can put out very small, limited print run, 2nd and 3rd and umpteenth printings. Whether they should or not is a different question, I think.
Well, I mean, we're going to see a lot more of it, whether it's needed or not, because now the speculative market's got a super big, hard eyes for 3rd, 4th printings. I mean, It's crazy, man. I mean, all the Kate stuff that comes out. I mean, third, fourth printings are automatically $15 on eBay, $20 on eBay. So like, there's that
down to the small print run right there, legitimately scarce.
It's just so weird.
Do the publishers read the comic? Do they know it's going to be hot? That's the thing that always has me come back and go, did you guys look at the art and the story and think, hey, these stores have under-ordered? Or did you just, because we've only seen the cover and 3 lines of text. We don't know how good it might be inside. That's the part that's always surprised me when hot books are way underprinted. It's like, you had a great artist on this and you saw all of it. How did you get this wrong? Yeah.
True. I mean, but then the sellout headlines and the second printing headline and everything else has become marketing unto itself.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, guys, let's move though into the second part of DC. So we talked about the old, and the new, and whatever else. So let's talk about what happened now. It looks like major changes, humongous shakeup across the line. We're going to lose a lot of content from DC. They're just going to print a lot less comics. It looks like now. Leef, tell me your take on this. What are your take on the whole layoff situation? I'm going to bring up some other stuff.
They took off a lot of the high salaries. They left a lot of like the mid-level editors and assistant editors. I think we'll see the same level of content, but with just lower level of skill, maybe, or experience overseeing it. And I was just looking at Heidi's article, and that there's this mysterious esports guy coming in, and that does not speak well, Yeah. I mean, and to cut back on Black Label, which is one of the things that has actually consistently sold well, seems ridiculous. But I mean, they're shooting their both feet off.
But okay, so we got to be really, really careful because everything is entirely speculative right now. Like, DC has not made a formal press release. They haven't announced who was actually let go. Last time I checked, maybe I'm wrong on that. So all these speculations about they're cutting, the Black Label, they're cutting this, they're cutting that. We don't really know, right? So if that's true, yeah, that's terrible. But at the same time, you've got to take a look at that. Okay, AT&T is a $170 billion annual company, and DC is maybe 100 million, maybe 120 million of that 170 billion. They are literally a rounding error. Literally a rounding error. They could disappear tomorrow, and it wouldn't really.
Yeah, from our old pal John Jackson Miller at Comicron. I invited him to be on the show, but he's having power issues, or he'd be here saying this. But he said, Dan, snapshot my tweet. Okay, AT&T's post buyout debt is around 3,000 times what DC took in from the direct market. Total earnings, not profits, in 2019. It's very likely larger than the total sales of every comic book and graphic novel ever sold by anyone in the United States, even adjusted for inflation. So I asked him, what does this mean? Or I asked him, does this essentially mean that it would not matter if they quintupled the sales at DC? It would not have made one bit of difference in this decision.
No.
That's what is so frustrating about it, though, because the point of DC Comics within AT&T and Warner shouldn't be that they need to justify a profit on every single line item. I mean, DC Comics has proven it as a whole is a line item in their world.
Yeah.
But what they're not seeing, the ephemeral part you're not going to see on a spreadsheet, is all of the money that gets generated from the content they create at such a low cost. DC should be a loss leader. It should be just, pour as much money as it takes into it, double their budget, triple their budget, let it lose money, and then you'll make billions on the other end when you exploit a handful of those ideas into movies. That's really all it takes. And that's the way Paul Levitz ran it, and it worked.
Well, it works when your movies make the billions, but they haven't had the same track record, right, as some of their distinguished competition.
So I think all the time what Mike just said, word to word, I think that all the time. But a part of me wonders, does some business guy in a boardroom say, hey, how old is DC Comics? 75, 80 years, whatever. Why do we need to pay comic creators for more content when we can just pay for 80 years worth of source material?
Well,
Yeah.
there is that.
Some of it was horrible too.
Yeah, that's what Marvel used to do. They used to, Marvel in the 50s, they would hire everyone except Stan Lee, and then things would get better, and they hire more creators again.
Yeah.
So it's a tragedy.
And I mean, it's scary, but didn't Disney just shutter the 20th Century Fox label today? Like, it's gone,
Yes. Yep.
right? That is one of the single most famous movie studios in the world. Poof, gone. And Disney.
20th Century. They
What's
changed
that?
the name. They changed it to 20th Century. They didn't actually close it. It's not. It's no longer 20th Century Fox. It's just 20th Century now. That's what I.
Oh, is that all it is?
Yeah,
But I thought they did that years ago.
Rebranding.
No, that's been a lot. That was a long time coming.
Yeah,
I'm
they
not
did.
sure about Brian, I'm not sure about that closing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think Disney's removed Fox from all of their.
Well, yeah,
What's-
that. I
yeah.
mean, that's yeah.
What they did today was they announced a new TV logo. It just says 20th Television. It looks just like the old logo minus a couple of words. So I think they're just using this as a placeholder to transition to eventually a more Disney-centric logo, probably a year from now or something, I would guess.
I think the real point, though, is that there's just small potatoes in their mind. Like, see that bigger picture that you talk about, the creative juice and the way that those stories, like, we would not have had the great movies we had without the comics that came in the last 10, 20 years. It's really been the modern stuff that translated into the movies. Like, you wouldn't have had a successful MCU without the Ultimates by Hitch and Millar, for instance. Like, those were all informed by recent stuff. They are underestimating that. They think it's like the character, the name Spider-Man, that means everything. And I think they underestimate the creative juice that they get out of comics at a low price, like you said.
Well, and it's also just probably, the whole Warner layoff was a third of their staff, was it not? So this is just in line with what they did kind of across the board.
Right.
Just get rid of a third. And on the movie and TV side, it was a lot of senior execs. It was the big players, right?
The big salaries.
And no, who's ever bought a comic because who edited it?
That's true.
Yeah, bingo.
Not a few
Burger
people.
books maybe, but beyond that, there's very little. That anyone
Although,
does.
Stu, I look at my shelf behind me, and there is a line from when, what was his name, Mark Caruso, the guy that was kind of their graphic designer. You can tell when he left based on the wall behind me, because
Mark
there's
Chiarello.
all these Chiarello, that's right.
Yeah.
There's these beautiful covers, and then there's the New Titans omnibuses, right? and that's it. That's where it happened.
I love it.
Which
Brian. I
the
love
fourth
it.
volume isn't even the same as the first three crappy volumes. Like, it's just,
Don't get Ryan Higgins on here to talk about
I
Mason's
know.
Creek.
His ears are burning.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't
no,
get me started on those or the Justice League Omnibus, the Justice League International Omnibus, how badly they screwed that one up.
so I guess what I'm saying is that nobody ever bought a comic because of an editor, but
I disagree.
intrinsically, well, I kind of agree too. Denny O'Neil, right?
Yeah.
Here's the question, though. Did they really buy it because of a publisher? That's my question. So, the potential business model, in my mind, you're an exec and you're looking at your balance sheet on DC Comics and you're saying, look, it costs us this much in creative costs and everything else. We make this much. Our profit is this. And if we were to just straight up take these characters and license them out, say, hey, Dark Horse Comics, how much would you pay for the license to make DC Comics and use these characters? And if it's more than the profit they're making, straight up, they're going to make that decision. That's going to be the only reason that counts that will make them make that decision. That's just me shooting my mouth off. Anybody agree or disagree with that?
Yeah.
I hope not. But, sorry, Luke. But Marvel, when they licensed off the Star Wars to IDW, they didn't sort out international rights. So I actually can't get those books in New Zealand. It's possibly the same in Canada.
Crazy.
So if they do that, then if anyone's watching, please, talk to the lawyers, get it right.
Yeah.
To them, though, in their minds, they go, "Oh, wow! Well, then the international rights is just another plum that we can try and find another licensee for."
We'll sell it to Panini.
Much like Disney, yes, exactly. Like Disney has done with their characters for decades and decades and decades already. The second that it is a penny more that they're going to make, in my opinion, somebody who doesn't understand the creative synergy and everything that we're talking about is going to probably go in that direction.
And those people are editors. Editors are the people that still put together creative teams. They pair writers and artists. They have the taste and the eye and the vision to put together a creative team that will work on a book. And I do think that like Mark Doyle has, even if you weren't aware, there was a change when Mark Doyle came onto the Batman books, and there will be a change when he's gone. These do make a difference in how books sell.
This is true, but could you not imagine a system where, and I was talking through this with John Jackson Miller as well. He's a guy who writes licensed characters, right? He writes Star Wars novels, and he goes, "Man, okay, I'm licking my chop." He writes both. Star Wars. He writes both, right? So so he writes them both. So, but whatever, he's licking his chops at the chance to expand into other characters. I mean, he said beyond like licensing the whole universe, what if he could just get the rights to who did he say? Was it not Martian Manhunter? Red Tornado. He's like, what if I just I've got the greatest idea for Red Tornado. Let me get the license for that and put that out. Why not a series of different studios, independent studios, licensing characters, sets of characters, or perhaps one jumbo fee for the entire universe? To me, it makes a lot of sense. I think we could see better comics that way, bottom line.
I think of it from a sales point. I mean, people are hungry for crossovers to a certain extent, so I'm already on board to that to some degree. But like, how many crossovers are selling because of novelty versus like good content? So I get kind of like weary about anyone just having anything, but it's all about execution. Like, I feel like if you put out something like that, it will sell really well as a wacky crossover just on novelty at first. But I mean, that's playing the short game. I'm all about the long game. That's how we all pay our bills on a continuous basis. So give me that quality crossover. It's like giving a Marvel versus DC book to just some average Joe that no one's heard of. Perfect example, which we tie back to editorial maybe, the Dark Ages of 2015 when we had Convergence. The writer on that book, no one heard of. That guy came out of nowhere. It was last name King, but it wasn't Tom King. It was some other guy. And no one, like, people read it because they were conditioned to read it. It was the only thing coming out, and they want to know what it was all about. But God, I mean, people are still talking trash about that comic. Yeah. And
but I mean, there would be hit and miss, right? Like there would be good pitches and bad pitches and good teams and bad teams. But I think we could get some there's great talent floating out there that are not able to penetrate the editorial system at DC.
Well, that's why I hope Black Label doesn't go away, because Black Label's formula, for the most part, is getting those non-conventional big two writers, artists, the indie guys, and putting them on big two characters. Yeah. For me, the only flop I've had of that formula, like every time it's been a success, other than the combo of putting, and I'm sorry, because I love this book. I was so bummed to see it like do really bad at both my shops, was the Tom Scioli or Scioli, however you pronounce his last name, him doing FF. Nobody read that book at both my shops. They looked through the pages and they were just like, what is this? And I was like, it's gold. And they were just like, okay, Timmy. And that was like the only indie guy on big two characters that was a flop for me. Otherwise, like Daniel Warren Johnson on Wonder Woman Black Label was a hit. All the indie guys, like Grand Design, X-Men was a hit. So for me, I'm like, give me more of that. But yeah, it's what it is.
Well, it's going to be different effects. But speaking of Tom Scioli, hey, next week on Comic Book News, Tom Scioli. He's going to talk about his new book, Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. And I can tell you, knowing what I know about Tom, a book that he does like FF, work for hire, even though he loves Kirby and the FF, is a little different animal than something like this, which he owns the rights to. And honestly, I read it. It was a wonderful book. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a great call 1 week from tonight. So tune in, guys, for that one. Cool. Leef, you want to? I'm sorry, sorry to do such a ham-handed promo for next week's show. But Leef, did you have some comments there? You were trying to get in for a second.
I guess that the idea of like a decentralized, different people pitching their own ideas for different lines. That's what Marvel does. That's Marvel doesn't really has a very weak editor-in-chief right now. And some of the books do well, and some of them don't. But it's very decentralized, and
honestly, I think I kind of prefer that to a more like rigidly controlled kind of house style. Anyway, I think put different creative teams, let them flex their muscles. Continuity, honestly, be damned, because the good continuity sticks, and the bad continuity just kind of slips away into nothing. So, guys, so do you think, let me just ask you this. So on the DC topic, after the timing of the change in the pandemic and everything else and everything that happened, what effect, if any, this is mostly for Leef, Timmy, and I guess Stu, what effect did that have on your DC orders? Because I'll tell you, the macro effect was that the very popular books stayed at good sales. The lower selling and mid-tier books cratered somewhat in sales. But then we're going to do a segment in just a second we'll get to after about sell-through data during that time in just a second. But tell me, what effect did it have on your orders? Did you lose any goodwill for DC Comics and like your support for new initiatives or things going forward? Leef, tell me that.
Yes. No, it has lost me some goodwill, and it has lost me some sales. I mean, given the circumstances, I'm getting very few browsing customers. So I am cut back to about pretty much pull list customers only. And then I have these titles that have some growth, but I'm not able to get those customers books. Like I have growth on, Tom King on Strange Adventures, but I can't, get the more recent issues because the distributors don't have the copies.
Right.
So that's a big problem.
Oh, but speaking of John Jackson Miller, everybody, he's in the comments right now. So there'll be some questions by him. He's in there talking with everybody and chatting it up about all this stuff. So we're going to have him in very soon to talk about, we always bring in JJ and we had that I had that stream with John Jackson Miller and Brian Hibbs. And then we talked about book scan data and we talked about ICV2's charts. So today ICV2 has, or not today, but recently announced a new initiative, and they're announcing reporting on sell-through data as reported by ComicHub. So I want to just segue for a second into that because I want to talk to Stu. Stu, could you just tell how that came about, your partnership with ICV2 and like what?
We're actually in partnership with NPD Bookscan. So we're supplying their graphic novel sell-through data, and we were about to start providing it all back to our clients. It was going to be a feature within ComicHub point of sale tools, and then COVID hit, and it just lost its ability to be sort of front and center of what we were doing. So we're going to be pivoting back to that in a week or two to start providing Leef and Timmy sell-through on it, but. NPD didn't want the comic information. They only wanted graphic novels and toys. So we had to build the tools that actually created it all for everything. And so there was this comic data. We were building a media site for media parties to be able to log in to look at this information. It gives them. So Milton now has access to. He can look at by sales period. He can bring up a catalog. He can bring up specific creators, and he can look at all the sell-through to see, what are creators really worth, what's going on in the industry by genre, brand, everything that's a parameter within the system. He can analyze it over a period of time. He can group all the covers to see how it's all working, and then he's, reporting what's actually selling through as opposed to what's selling into the stores. And
is
yeah,
that
that information is
time
going to.
data he's able to tap into, right? Like, so he could log in tomorrow and the sales would be different than they were today.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a level of fidelity and speed.
And then we're going to be giving that to our clients. So when they do their reorders, we've got a new. We're always continually evolving the point of sale. So it's going to be sort of a recommending. Okay, these might be what you were selling well of, but these are some things in your area that are actually selling a lot better, and you might want to start tapping into ordering this product and that sort of thing. So it's been there for a while. It's been something we wanted to do. It just got torpedoed when the world shut down in April. So, but it's very close, and like all the SQL, everything's written there for our clients. We just need to build the actual platform for them to be able to log in and access it. What Milton has is slow, and our clients aren't going to, like, if he picks a month and says, I want to see this, the queries can take minutes to run. So we're actually going to drill it down to basically a single products and things like that. So from the point of sale, they can say, well, how well does Hush sell? Or not so much Hush. Comic retailers know what they can sell. It's what don't I know? That's the information we all want to know. What information do I miss here? What's a hot book that I don't know because I didn't read that artist? And we're going to be able to start providing them that information.
Okay, and so there's been some talk about it. Once that article dropped, there's been some discussion about, like, well, it's ComicHub. There's 85 stores reporting there. That doesn't seem like a lot of stores on the face of it. But I started doing the math, and depending on who you believe about how many stores are on the direct market, we're talking anywhere between 3 and maybe 7% or more.
Well, first off, it's 85 stores is reporting because that's the number we were at when the world shut down. So every new client we've brought on since, we're not pushing their data through because we have to set a start point to be able to make this thing work. So we've probably got a week's worth to go back. So it's probably closer to 120. And then we've also got another 20 stores sort of lined up that have been inquiring that we've had to put off because DC's created 6, 7, 8 and counting weeks worth of work, which has been glorious for us. And we're relaunching our app hopefully tonight in a few hours. So we've just been really busy with some other stuff that I think has helped our clients a lot better. And now that we've got those pieces in place, so I think the data that we're pushing through to that is going to be close to 150 within a month or so. And when we can also then start saying to other stores who may have thought this information was useless, well, don't you want to know what sells in your area? Don't you want to know what's selling that you don't know? So I think it'll help us.
What about all the ComicHub stores that must have shut down since COVID's happened, right? You must have lost a lot of business to that, right?
0.
Oh wait, no ComicHub stores. They were able to pivot instantaneously and take care of everything and be ready.
I'll send you some quotes, Dan, but we've got quite a few of our retailers who said we would have gone under if we didn't have ComicHub.
Well, wait a minute. I got 2 of them right here. So let's hear from the horse's mouth.
Okay. Yeah.
For a second. Timmy and Leef, I'm going to put you on the spot here. This is for real. Give me your unvarnished, top level. If somebody came to you, and I am coming to you, I want to open a comic book store. What do I use to run my what would you recommend? Let's start with Timmy again.
Oh man, Hub was essential to when I was it's essential before COVID, but of course having the website in place, it was a no-brainer to our success through COVID. It kept people engaged by being able to make orders at the store, add stuff when things were announced. I'm very excited for the app to be live again. My customers loved the previous app, so it's rebirth. I'm very excited to showcase to anybody opening up a store. I absolutely would recommend Hub. I am debating doing a 3rd store next year or the year after. And before, there's no way I would open without Hub in place. I mean, it's like there's one other store in my entire county that sells new comics. And it's like when people trickle into my shops to that's their local shop and they hear we have a website where they can order all their variants and, all that stuff. They're like, wait, what? Are you lying to me? No, it's real, man. It's completely real. During COVID, it was the 2 things that generated me the most money were having a website for people to buy all my inventory from and eBay. And it's if I didn't have that.
Can we call it, Stu, are you offended if people call it Chub? because frankly, I just think that's
I want to get one more question here. Timmy, what did you have before ComicHub? Why don't you tell the world that?
I had Comic Suite. And Comic Suite was not sweet. It's was not a perfect program, and I love it when people give Stu a hard time about tech support by not like answering a question within like an hour, because it's like, yo, you should have had Comic Suite. There was no tech support at all, dude. Like anytime there was a problem, it's like, well, guess we got to figure out ourselves. Comic Suite's inventory capabilities was a joke. Its pull service, like to put people down for stuff, was just like, it was just such a pain. Comic Suite, like, yeah, dude, like it's just like I would not be surprised if that just goes extinct like a few months, a year down the road. And yeah, it's just I can't believe I was on it as long as I was, and I could have been on Hub way sooner.
Well, I'll tell you from the inquiries that we're getting, and I'm sure, Stu, you're getting just as many. Like it is on its way out sooner than later. People are getting off of it so fast, and they can't get off of it quickly enough, because when I get the data, and Stu, you have had their data. I mean, you have things like customer IDs that are wrong. I just spent 4 hours today reconciling customer IDs that were wrong. And I did it by matching up first and last names and creating my own customer IDs. Like, it's ridiculous. And yeah, it's stupid. So
we're sour on Comic Suite. Leef, what's been your experience?
I did the same migration, and yeah, I've been really happy with ComicHub. You know, on the opposite side of like Timmy, I would say that like it's been really helpful in trimming the fat, you know, eliminating the things that are not selling, you know, particularly on single issues, you know, and particularly through this period where, you know, it's all about, you know, your pull list customers and managing them and getting them the books and not relying on walk-ins, because walk-ins barely exist.
Right.
And you mentioned before, Dan, you brought up the idea of how much was DC's change, the disruption. COVID is the disruption right now.
Yeah,
DC's just it was a pain, you know, and we all had to soldier through it because the decision was made. But our businesses are operating completely differently now, not because DC's doing something different, but because we're operating in a pandemic. That's the change.
Yeah. So Brian, I didn't want to put you on the spot with all that ComicHub talk, right? But like, tell me, what are your plans or thoughts, if any, about like harnessing sort of the network effect of your customers and their data, and maybe being involved with some kind of reporting system? Yep. Any for stuff like that? Yeah,
we've been working with a couple different partners on figuring out which data is meaningful to get out, because we could provide data, but unless it's actual meaningful data that people want, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So we've got some stuff underway. We've got a couple of reports that we've been working on, which we just broke today, but that's just par for the course. Right now, they're just internal that we're using to just monitor what's out there, and then we'll figure out what we want to do with it going forward. I think it's really important that we make it aggregate data and that we don't tie it to individual customers, because that's just gross.
So let's talk about that for a second. So personally, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer that a centralized system that can aggregate from dozens and dozens or hundreds or whatever of retailers for a single place and report, just besides saving time and being more efficient and everything else, is just going to be 100% more reliable than expecting, let's say, 85 separate retailers to each wrangle their data and report it. I mean, it's hard enough to get retailers to do their FOC every week, and they have a direct financial benefit from doing so. So to get them to like report voluntarily, to get all of them, some of them, are going to do it. But so Leef, what do you think about the realities of, Mike Hansen? I wanted to, before we move into that exactly, what I want to ask you is about, from you, when I met you, you worked in like a bookstore scenario where there's a couple of vendors or several good used and new bookstore POS vendors and stuff. What is the situation like in that scenario, like as far as choices and standards that you've used?
Well, funny thing, because I've worked with 2 different bookstores in town that deal in both new and used books. And for about 4.5 years, I was with Eureka Books, and I was the guy in charge of the comics and graphic novels. And as far as the graphic novels, what we had to do in order to track sales was there was a program, and it was called Basil, and it's an all-in-one POS and inventory management system. It has its own issues, and it's buggy, but it's relatively stable, and they churn out updates all the time because it's very customizable. But what was great about Basil was that I could look up, say, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. It'll give me every line item of anything we've ever sold that has those words in it, whether it's a single issue or a different edition of the graphic novel. And I could look at the entire sales history within the store for that. So internally, for the individual store, it was incredibly useful because I could see how long it took for a new or used copy to sell. If it's a new book and it's been sitting for a year, I'm going to return it. I don't care if it's The Dark Knight Returns. I'm returning it because there's no local interest in a new $20 copy of it. Right. But used ones I could sell all day long. They would sell within a couple of weeks. So there's definitely a market for that material, but you just get into you can analyze things as far as price resistance and what is more appealing to your local market with a system like that. But as far as being able to compare it globally, the only thing we had access to were Amazon sales ranks, which when you're dealing with graphic novels is not very useful because 95% of graphic novels, at least that current edition, is going to be out of print in less than a year. So,
so this is great. This is what when I reached out to.
I'm not going to say anything about my current employer.
So I also reached out to Milton Greep to ask him about this. Sorry for covering you up, guys, down there for a second. All right. And I said, I reached out because he's been on the show before and invited him, but it was a little too late. Thanks for asking a book tonight. I hope sell-through rankings are useful to our readers. To me, it's like turning on a light in a dark room, which was the situation once product went to retail in comic book stores. I'm looking forward to bigger numbers of stores in the reporting, which Stu says is coming soon, which will only continue to improve the info. By the way, we just posted Q2 market shares for those who like to keep score that way. On the DC issue, I'm just generally disappointed that it appears they're going to be investing less in creative comics content, which is a loss for the business. I encourage everybody watching who hasn't checked out ICV2 to check out that article, because what I found fascinating about it, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-show, and I wanted to make sure we brought this up, is that if you look at the sell-in numbers, Marvel is the clear publishing winner. But if you're looking at the sell-through numbers, and granted, we're looking at a small subset of the sell-through numbers. Well, Stu, why don't you explain to me the ramifications of the difference between those things, sell-through, sell-in, and sell-through?
Well, it's the reality of what's really happening, and it also gives it starts to let us value what creators are really worth. Like, it's not a case of you did this book that had 1 in 2,000 variants, so people brought up large on it. And this is what this, I think, is starting to demystify. Are some of the Marvel variant programs hurting the industry? If we're pulping comics because we're buying them to just sell the big variant, then that's just waste, and that's inefficiencies, and that doesn't help anybody because you're paying for the freight. You know, you're paying for the publisher's paying for the paper, whatever it is, or the comics are being paid for. If the reality is this is what your benchmark is for what you can sell, and if you still want to do a variant program, do your variant program. If it's a 1 in 2,000 variant and it becomes a 1 in 500 variant because that's all you're selling, sell it for $50. Wholesale it for $50. You know, get rid of all the waste in between it. And maybe I'm hoping that's what starts to come out of this, is that we can start to look at these things properly.
But Stu, that 2,000 copies that they got, though, they could use that to seed the market for readers, right? They're giving those out as free copies. They're handing them out.
you want me to give the exact example of what we talked about earlier, Dan, when I spoke to a retailer?
Yes, but organically.
All right, I spoke to a retailer who chased the 1 in 2,000, and I said, look, how do you do that? As a shop, I wanted to know, what gimmicks are you using to push these extra issues? And he turned to me and said, are you kidding? We're going to find 3 images in that FF book, and we're going to pulp them into buttons. So 1,000 of the comics were going to be turned into buttons that they sold for $1 each. So technically, is that sell-through on a comic? Maybe you're selling the item, but that's not sales of a comic. That's someone using it for something completely different.
Arts and crafts.
How much time are they on doing the button machine then, man? Like,
I don't have a button machine. You tell me, Timmy. But they sold the 1 in 2,000 for $4,000, whatever. They made their money there, and then they turned the rest of it into buttons. So
don't hate on the button. Don't hate on the button.
I'm not hating on the button. I'm not
hating, man. I'm just thinking about the time or the money spent paying the person.
Do that again, Timmy. How's it go?
Yeah, Timmy, not everybody hustling 24/7 online, selling and doing everything every minute of the day. Some people got downtime. They can spend some time.
I'm not trying to sound like a dick here, but trust me, bud. I know. I look at the industry. I see some comic shop owners. I know you spend more time reading comics.
The other side to that, Timmy, he supplied someone who wanted the 1 in 2,000 variant. So he found a way to keep that customer happy. So I was emotionally torn.
But it is the waste. And honestly, if you multiply the waste of like shipping the paper to the printers and then the printers and shipping it here and then shipping it out and packaging it and every retailer handling those books that nobody really gives a damn about.
What was the comic with the 1 out of 2,000 variant?
FF #1, I think he said.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four.
That was a $6 book, right?
Yeah, 2 years ago. Yep.
I don't know if it was 6.
Yeah, I think it was
quite that much. Really?
Yeah, it was thick.
Okay.
And he sold it for 4K.
I don't know the exact number. Don't. He made money on that.
It work.
He also would have qualified for like 1 in 200s and the 1 in 100s and the 1 in 50s, and each one of those is a price premium too, right? So
good point. And I don't think many people factor in the losses based on the labor and the handling and the button punching. They're not even thinking that way. They're sort of like back of the envelope going, I can make a little bit of profit and I can have this book that nobody else has.
If you're selling the buttons, they're not a loss.
I know that. But I mean, the labor, they're not thinking about the cost of the labor of making the buttons. They're not factoring that into the cost of the button. I think in most cases, I don't know.
Maybe. I'm pretty sure he was doing the punching. I'm pretty sure it was staff. Right. And everyone's got staff in the comic shop. They had downtime. There's right.
True. And do a few thousand of them at once. You could do a little bit at a time.
We could use their time to normalize some data, Stu? Instead of punching buttons, just normalize a little data for me.
Leef. Sorry.
So talking about the data and the status quo of the industry, this is Steve Jeppy seems like a nice guy and like his heart is in it, but this is the opportunity that Diamond has wasted. Diamond could have had control over all of this data. They could have had all these tools that would help comic stores sell comics better. And they've created opportunities for Stu and Brian, but by falling by the wayside, by trying to do, website and app development on the cheap on the East Coast, not hiring the best technical people to create tools that everybody could use. Their smartest thing that they could do now is to probably hire Stu and Brian and have them working on the same system, but they're not doing that. They don't even see the problem.
Well, I agree with you, Leef. I think it's a symptom of when you don't have competition for 20 years, there's very little incentive to improve. What do you care? Why do I need to improve my retailer tools? Where are they going to go? Go get your comics somewhere else, kid.
Well, going to Comixology is one place. Diamond is in the print business. They should be doing everything that they can do to promote print and opening new stores that sell print, and they're not doing that.
Yeah, they had 20 years to get those golden handcuffs in a place where they would be really hard to get away from their tools, and frankly, they didn't succeed in that.
Well, and I reached out to Diamond 15 years ago about this stuff. 15 years ago when I founded All New Comics, and we were an online comic shop, and I was like, I would like to use more of your data to do more of this stuff. And they were like, no, we don't have any interest in that. I'm like, really? Because this is the way things are going to go. And they didn't want to play ball back then. And you know what? It's interesting that now Diamond's actually starting to play ball with people because they know they don't have a choice.
So
absolutely.
On a related note, here's a question for you guys. How reliant is everyone on variant covers in order to make a profit now, to make those sales you need to make to get through all of this? It seems like there's more variant covers than ever, and that because of like online sales like Comic Book Shopping Network or eBay, that there's a lot more demand for these scarcer covers, regardless of the fact that the insides are exactly the same, that there are a lot more collectors for comics as objects now than at any time, even in the 90s, I would guess. What do you guys think?
I call variant covers of trading cards. That's how I see them. There's a segment of the market that just wants to collect. You've got guys who just want the art journal covers. You've got guys who go for series, and as long as they're open to order, they're fine. I don't chase anything. I refuse. And there's times I don't even order. If I've ordered 40 copies of a comic and there's a 1 for 25 variant, if I think the variant's a pig, I won't order it. I don't care less. Yeah.
I don't chase, but what I will do is I will factor in two things. Can I make a shit ton more money off this and then also pay for the regular copies? Or can I just sell these ratio of incentive variants and still just pay for the regular copies? And I'm so conditioned to that, that strategy, that what's funny is last FOC was Black Widow #1, who, it's a interesting book because it was supposed to come out ages ago and people were excited for it and it never came out. Plus there's the Black Widow movie coming out, and I'm ordering pretty big on it because of those two factors. Plus the creative team's good, the covers are good. But what's funny is there was no ratio variants. And I saw myself looking at the order screen and going, geez, I mean, we went from years of Marvel putting out too many ratio covers where it'd be just lines of pages and pages for one book of all the covers you can qualify for and choose from. And here's Black Widow for like 3-4 options. And so I was actually I was bummed because I ordered so much between both shops. And it's like, Marvel said, nah, no extra money for you, Timmy. And whatever, but still, I was like,
Okay, so Timmy is willing to put in the elbow grease and the mind, expand the mind power, as well as whatever he needs to do to figure if he can make money off it and do what he can to make. Leef, what is your strategy with that kind of stuff?
I mean, I'm still a reader's store. I will dabble in the variants, but the short-term profit on a variant sale, doesn't stand up to a customer that's going to be with you for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. That's the gold. That's what you want.
I agree.
As a retailer, the time that it just put a terribly sour taste in my mouth was when Marvel started liquidating all their old back issue variants on Diamond for like $3 each. And these were like House of M and like the 1 in 25, the 1 in 50s, the 1 in 100. You could buy them for $3 2 years after House of M, but still that was disgusting. And I that was the point where when I co-ran All New Comics, we just said we don't want to be in the variant game because you're going to pay $50 for something that I can then buy in 6 months for $3.
They did it for 2 months after that hologram debacle that they did in October. They were coming out 2 months later, and every retailer was like, "No way! The hoops we had to jump through for these, and you're going to quit them."
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah, that was an angry day.
Yeah.
Now, what about store exclusive variants? Timmy, I know you just did your first one, right?
Oh yeah. Hey, good.
Yeah,
How's that going?
It wasn't great.
So Timmy, you're part of the problem. Tell us a little bit about that.
I love being part of the problem because it pays my bills. It's like I want to respond to what Leef said though about the longevity, readers, 20 years, the sales through. What's interesting is Arsenal was established in 2014, right? So we started right in that year where 2014 was a great year for comics. The numbers were super high. That's how I con people to give me a business loan because the numbers were there. The sales data was there. It was a great year. But the interesting thing is, and this is a perfect example of how each market can be different, each store can be different, is my Ventura store manager, who's been with us just shy of 6 months now, came from a store that did nothing with variant covers. The open order B covers, the C covers did not move for her. At my two stores since day one, nonstop. I got longtime customers. So it's like sales data, sales through data for ages, for years of these poll guys that love the covers, which my numbers, of course, have gone up thanks to Hub because now they can get a little preview, a little taste, and put them down for it. So it's, to me, you can get the same thing with variant covers. They're still reading them. I mean, I don't care if they're reading them or not. They're still buying them. They're still collecting them. They love it. So I would like to say that the same thing can be achieved with the, as Stu would say, trading card collectors.
Yeah. My strategy with it was always, and I don't know if this is the best or not, but I loved it because I would just not reach too hard for variants unless it was something really strong. But most of the time, either take them and mark them for a reasonable markup depending on the ratio, or just use them as rewards to my longtime customers that I didn't discount on. I would sell it I didn't pay any extra to get this. I just got it because it hit my numbers, and I could say, "Hey, dude, you want to buy this for cover price? You just got to buy the regular cover, and I'll sell you this one for cover price, or for a lot less than it's going for on eBay." You know what I mean? Like if it's going for a lot, I'll sell for half that or something. Make them feel they got a real perceived value out of it and got a reason to shop with me.
We just used to randomly throw them into somebody's bag and put a sticky note on it and say, "Congratulations, you got a variant cover."
I never answered your question though, Dan.
Yeah. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, it was before this. The only experience I had was the DC Nation, where you could put like a back ad and a logo, which was like a promotional tool. So this was my first for-profit store exclusive. It kind of just happened. My partner Paul, who does our logo or all our graphic design, he was like, "Hey, so Green Hornet #1 coming up. I love the show. Here's an image, Timmy." And I was like, "All right, let's do it. I'll hit up Dynamite." And the print run was only 500. So I was like, okay, I was doing the math on that. It all checked out. And the fact that it was my partner's artwork was like, okay, great. Our store colors are Green Hornet. Awesome. And this is a part where I'm super thankful that my two stores don't care about internet stuff, because it was hilarious that our first store cover was within it came out the same week that the writer got canceled on Twitter, and there was all that Dynamite drama with Comicsgate. And I'm just over here like, well, no, not listening. And thankfully, it's been selling great in store. Our customers love it. I want to do another exclusive.
You got one? Flash one for you. Got one handy there?
Sure. Where is it? It's right here. Yeah, it's right here. What do you know?
Plug-in, baby. Plug-in. Wait a minute. Let me ISO you. Hang on.
I love that. For $4.99, exclusive cover, Green Hornet 1. And look at that beautiful logo on the back. It's fantastic. It even says exclusive cover.
So did you say your partner drew that picture?
Yeah, my partner Paul.
See, that's Martinez. Cool. See, so now he's a published artist. That's fantastic.
Well, what's wild is me and him actually know each other because not to give a quick origin story, but before I opened up Arsenal, I worked at a shop for years, right? And you'd have all these indie guys like, I got this idea, I do this indie comic, and like they don't actually do it, or it's like the worst thing you ever seen, God bless them. And then my old man owns a surplus shop. And right, like 6 months into me doing my business plan, prepping it, he's like, my dad's from Liverpool. He goes, "Timmy, I just met this comic artist in my shop. He was buying pins. He does a war comic. I'm like, okay, Dad, whatever. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this guy's just another joker. And then here I am at age 21, just reading comics one night in the midst of doing my business plan. I'm like, all right, here, I got the Post-it note. I Google him. And here he is, a Kickstarter artist with like phenomenal sales through on his Kickstarter. So I was like, wow, people give a shit about this guy. He's the real deal. And then he has a booth at San Diego every year, WonderCon. He's got a killer independent comic. So he's self-published, but this was the first time on a comic book publisher.
Okay, what's his name again? I'm sorry.
Paul Roman Martinez. His webcomic / self-published comic now, 19XX.
And Timmy, I'd love to get my hands on one of those to review here on Comic Book News. Maybe next time I buy something, I'll from you. I'll add one of those. I'll add an impulse item.
Timmy, where do people go online to buy that?
His comic or our exclusive?
Your exclusive.
ArsenalCNG.com.
Oh, great. So they can order it right from there. Fantastic. I love it. Okay, guys, we're about through with, we didn't go too deep into the layoffs because frankly, there's not too much to say except I want to get some final thoughts just on the topic. Because my thinking on it, and this is informed from talking to a few people inside DC, in and out, or who've been around and had some pretty good insights. I feel like it was pretty safe to say that this was inevitable. This was going to happen no matter what. Given all the stuff that we discussed, the debt problems inherent from the AT&T purchase, just demanded there is no way they were not going to have to make massive cuts throughout their organization. So if this really now, with a slowdown in DC's output, that affects profits in the DM, is this the first domino in a chain of dominoes that could really spell the end of the monthly floppy pamphlet comic book? Timmy, tell me why not. Please tell me why I'm wrong.
If that was the case, why would they just set up deals with 2 new distributors? And I've only seen one website run an article with one quote saying that the numbers through the new distributors did not match the old distributor and that this was a factor. But I've only heard that quote once and seen it on one website. So a part of me kind of thinks that's not the case. They just set up all this money and time into 2 new distributors. My business personally is booming with comic sales since we reopened. It wasn't bad anyway, thanks to having a website and an eBay page when we were closed. But since we reopened, sales are great. I have to hire more staff to keep up with my business, and DC comics are selling better than ever. Do I worry about lack of people on payroll to make more content? I guess, if we're going to go through quality over quantity, I guess I'm okay. I have 13, 14, 9, 8 people on like the low tier titles that DC does. And if those titles go away, I'm going to lose money on that. But then will those people go on the big major books that they would have never read anyway? Maybe. Are we going to make up the money on DC? Which I still don't know how I feel about this. Is Higgins brought up the good point of, are we going to get more $9.99 books and more $8.99 books, which we've gotten a lot of them already lately. So I don't know, but those have been selling pretty okay, not gangbusters, but like you don't think so?
Well, mixed success. That's what I say. I buy them, right? And I just see such a difference in value between some of the offerings. That's been my problem. What's coming out at $9.99, $8.99, $6.99, wide format, big format, and then I can go to a bookstore and get graphic novels. I feel like I'm getting a much denser value many times. So I don't know. It's not as simple as this. I'm just really honestly worried. My thing is, could we survive the loss of DC Comics? Like if DC stopped publishing comics tomorrow, would that be the beginning of the end for the direct market?
No, because if a comic book retailer is as good at what they do as they should be, then they can move that time and attention of putting something else in front of their customers. I mean, it's why comic shops still exist and thrive that are big indie stores, big Marvel stores. I mean, those stores exist already and have existed already that don't do much DC sales. So it's like some stores out there are going to lose this much, but it's like, how many of those readers are diehard DC and aren't just going to read comics? I mean, what really defines the reader now? It's going to be, are they DC lovers or are they comic book lovers? Because I'm a comic book lover. So if no new DC was going to be stopped being made, if I was a consumer and not, the dirty retailer that I am, I would just read more Image, Dark Horse, or more. So, I mean, life will find a way, as Goldblum says in that one movie, but I don't think it's going to be the end of the direct market. But weren't comics supposed to be dying for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years?
Since 1976.
Yeah.
They've been supposed to die.
And it's just, throw me any challenge, I'm going to get through it. Like, what's one more thing? But DC's not going to be done. We all make too much money off Batman.
Yeah. Okay, Mike Hansen, tell me what you think the effect of these layoffs, are going to have in just the already competitive and tight market for freelance work and work in the comic book industry and publishing in general. Any thoughts on that? What that means?
Well, I think it means a couple of things. I think one, it means that you're seeing once again a loss of expertise in the field. That a lot of the people who have been in comics, who may have been at DC for 5, 10, 20 years, that might not have a job come December, they're more than likely going to leave the industry to find something that pays as well or better, because a lot of people are in comics because they love comics, not because it's where their talent is going to make the most money. But I think that we are going to have a brain drain because of this. And the other side of it, I think, is that it creates opportunities for people like me who are freelancers. I put together the contents of a few dozen Marvel books every year, and I'm not on staff. I'm not on salary. I don't have any benefits I get from Marvel, but I am probably doing what at a different publisher 1/3 to 1/2 of what the collected editions editor is doing. And since DC lost their top 2 collected editions people this week, is what multiple sources are saying now on a few different websites, I think that's going to have a significant effect on the quality of their print collections. And I think that could have a knock-on effect with DC. I mean, they've had mixed issues with branding in general. Just from the bookstore, I got all these advanced reader copies of DC books. Yeah. These are all for kids. These are new characters that we've never seen in a mainstream DC book aimed at a 25 to 35-year-old white guy. But these all look great, and they are going to sell great, just not to the traditional audience that we have known up till now.
Branding fiasco was, I'm super hardcore DC. I have been since I was 8 years old, and I still try and be pro DC as a retailer. But that whole branding fiasco was that was a hard pill to swallow for us all. The one that happened, it was like Death of Vertigo happened, and then they killed off Ink and Zoom after 6 months of it finally picking up speed. And now, those books you just showed off just say DC Comics. So
they say DC Kids or DC Young Adults. So that means that some executive in an office somewhere understands the target audience now, rather than the target audience responding to the brand.
There was a few of them that were just at DC. Right after that branding fiasco.
Right.
And I had one employee accidentally put in the Catwoman book in the kids section on the day it came out, and I was like, no. So I'm really
there's a lot of training that has to be done, I think, in the direct market about what the difference between an all ages and a young adult's book is. Because most people do not understand what young adult means, especially in the modern bookstore era. They're very, I don't want to say explicit, but they are the sex and drugs and everything else are a big part of that, as they should be, right? Because those are issues that today's young adults have to deal with. But what we brought up on other shows, when you take it from prose into a pictorial format, especially, you get an opportunity to really run into some stressful pushback from protective parents groups and things like that. Leef, any thoughts on that? Tell me about your thoughts on the obvious. And tell me, guys, it's not been obvious. I've been saying it. The pivot, the DC pivot, the direct market. I was over here. I'm over here now. I'm in the bookstores, not the direct market.
Is that your best damn video impression?
That's happening. I think they're trying to put both feet in both markets. I think that all these layoffs hit a short-term salary cap goal. Like, okay, we need to eliminate some dollars. But in my experience with corporate layoffs, many or not all of similar people will be rehired within 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
And, probably higher salaries.
Yes. Maybe. Well, I'm going to doubt. Somehow Jim Lee escaped the axe. His executive assistant did not. Right. True. So, Brian Garside, what are your thoughts on that? Dude, they have lopped off the head as far as the editor-in-chief. They kept Jim Lee as chief creative officer, no longer publisher. He was co-publisher, then he was publisher for a second. Now he's chief creative officer, but the publisher reports to him. Any thoughts on that kind of corporate structure? Is that even meaningful to you at all?
I don't even have a clue about that. I do want to move back to one thing, though. You keep using this word bookstores, and I'm curious what that word means. Bookstores. You keep using it, and there are way more comic stores in my town than there are bookstores. There are 2, maybe 3 bookstores in the city. There are 6 comic stores. Yeah. So where is this mythical bookstore that all these kids are going to walk into and pick up those DC Young Reader books? DC getting rid of the comic store, being part of getting rid of the comic store in any way, shape, or form is the stupidest thing that they could possibly do.
Well, do you have a Walmart in your town or big box retailers? Because because that's where you're going to see this stuff too.
Sure,
right?
But you're going to see this tiny little end cap that nobody ever goes to. Nobody goes to Walmart to pick up their books.
Target, though, man.
We don't have Target in Canada. That was a big failure.
But I go, yeah.
When those books went down. When COVID was first a thing and Target was getting slower shipments and the shelves looked bare and it looked kind of, apocalyptic, their very decent sized kids, young adult section, which has a lot of graphic novels, that was emptied out. People are buying these books at the big box stores.
There's no doubt. They're getting pushed at the book fairs, right at the school level. The kids are coming home.
That's a whole other, absolutely.
Right, that are bringing. But so that's the genius of this pivot, is that Scholastic has got that kids market sewed up, but that's where do you graduate from kids? You graduate into young adulthood, and that market is not fully served. And you can see many of the new publishers coming into the market are going that way. They're not going superhero way. They're publishing. They're coming out with kids or young adult stuff. They're going after that Scholastic proven market.
Yeah, those books you pulled up, like Anti-Hero and Primer, which I think came out last week, they're not really kind of traditional superhero things.
Right. They use the superhero genre, but they're telling very character-based stories, not
very much so.
Action plots or anything. It's all about the characters and their feelings. And, that's where the market is right now for that age group for a lot of people. When I was working at that bookstore for 4.5 years, the best-selling graphic novel author that we had, it wasn't Frank Miller, it wasn't Alan Moore, it was Raina Telgemeier and Dav Pilkey.
Dave Pilkey, yeah.
And we sold the crap out of those.
By a wide margin, I'm willing to bet too, right?
Yes,
really.
And I was able to transition people, who would come in because they wanted that book because they got the first one from Scholastic and their parents, took them to the bookstore to get more. I was able to hand sell them things like Bone or whatever. I was able to transition them to other things. But those are what get people in the doors, those types of books now, for whatever reason. That's where the market is.
And I think that's one thing that DC doesn't really understand is that salespeople, passionate, knowledgeable salespeople, still sell books.
Exactly.
They don't just sell themselves off the internet.
Right.
COVID, I had lined up to have a table at Scholastic Book Fairs for the school year. And I was going to have all the all ages kid appropriate comic stuff that wasn't Scholastic, and it was going to be so awesome. Thanks, COVID.
Oh,
right. Well,
next year.
I'm going to say,
I'm going to answer that, Dan.
Yeah.
Your question. There's a whole lot of retailers and all of us, and we're trolling various forums, and we're looking at these things, and we're coming up with our decisions about what DC's doing. And I would like to think that AT&T has a significant large room full of people just saying, how are we going to deal with this continuing disruption of COVID? So I think there's a big section of people actually saying, it doesn't matter what Batman comic comes out next week. Are we going to be able to put Batman out in 6 months? And what changes do we have to make now? Because we all have to be leaner. We all have to run our businesses far more efficiently. And that, to me, I think a big part of what they're doing is they're preparing themselves for the fact that we could be in disrupted retail for 2-3 years to come. This isn't going away by the election, guys. It's going to continue to impact every aspect of us. And if DC were continuing like everything was normal, then we would be in trouble. Then we would be finding ourselves in December or January next year, and it's like, hey, that model that we were running with for 30 years, that we tried to run with for the last 9 months, that didn't really work. We needed to change some stuff. So I don't know what DC's end game is. I don't have any knowledge on what they're doing. They clearly didn't supply me and Brian with the new data structures that we needed to get. So we're in as much in the dark of it as you guys. But I sincerely hope that a big part of it is to make sure that the industry continues, and it has to continue leaner. It's as simple as that. Whether it's a case that AT&T can no longer afford to subsidize that section of DC because the movies aren't going to be coming out, because who's making a blockbuster right now? Is there any film actually in production? Yeah. So you're talking about the idea that comics are going to feed that. When does that part of it start up? So if they had to lay off some people so we can still sell comics at the end of the year, and that's how it is at the moment.
That's a great point, because AT&T historically has always been about short-term profit and rewarding their stockholders above everything else.
Of course.
So, this is really par for the course for them, taking these unilateral, drastic actions. We have to think that DC has had some of this in play for a long time, because even before COVID hit, it was pretty clear that there were issues with the distribution system that needed to be ironed out. Yeah. And I'm not saying they're fixed by any means. There's going to be bigger changes down the road probably. The only question is, will this ultimately cut out the people between the publisher and the reader? The distributors, the comic shops. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, maybe
15% of it maybe has to go. Maybe a big part of it is the waste that Diamond were creating, but through damages. And I look at what I'm getting out of Lerner, and I'm like, this stuff is brilliantly packed, no returns, no damages, which means that impacts DC's bottom line on what they're shipping to me by whatever 2 or 3% they had to eat with the previous distributor. So every business, every one of us is looking at smarter ways to run, and to ask DC to continue to run how they were is disingenuous and dangerous. I think what they've done, I don't know what the end result is, but they had to make change. Everybody
and UCS and Lerner are listening to us and doing things for us, right?
Yeah,
Stu?
Cameron has been so responsive.
Yeah, we've never had this kind of like response from Diamond the way that we are getting it from Lerner and UCS. So I think that's totally positive.
Yeah.
And in terms of, things being efficient and, using whatever data we can to, be as profitable as possible to stay afloat. I think that kind of brings the conversation full circle to what Brian and Stu are doing here.
Well, for sure.
Data is king, man.
Yeah. And just to wrap up on the DC point for now, and we're going to move on, and then we got to wrap up the show fairly soon. Strategically, I think they're making the right move with the pivot towards the bookstore, and even the move of separating from Diamond and going to the other. But it's all about the execution and the tactics that they use to get there. The strategies that this was like a dire strategy that they employed in the worst way at the worst time, that really, really hurt a lot of retailers when they needed extra support, not 5 other extra hassles to deal with. And I think that the pivot to the bookstore too, it was inevitable given the trends that we're seeing and the increase of sales of comics into the book trade as opposed to the direct market. That's just the way things are headed. I don't know that there's any way to get around that. But what I wish I had seen, what I wish we would see is stronger editorial on those young adult books that are coming out. Because I'll be honest, DC has access to some of the greatest comic making talent out there in the industry. And they are not bringing them in to those bookstore books. They are bringing in entry-level, brand new, first-time people and paying them a tiny page rate. And I think that's a misstep. Leef, what?
I disagree. I think they're very strong people.
I agree. And it
really good teams.
And it can't be the same people. Like, you can't use your same mainstream artists to sell to these kids. Like, they don't have the same.
It's like apples and oranges, man.
Yeah, it's a different aesthetic. Like, Raina Telgemeier is not Frank Quitely. They're different people.
Did you see the Harley Quinn book?
It was gorgeous. That was a beautiful book.
Yeah.
I think that a really talented comics creator can create books for a different audience, and it's that skill of sequential art and the storytelling and the rendering and all of that. That's what I'm saying.
But Dan, these are beautiful books. Like, I've got some of them behind me that I've been giving to my kids, and like they're
What's your favorite one? And I'll pick it up and I'll read it and I'll give it a fair shake, because this is honestly just at first blush the artwork that I've seen.
My personal favorite one is the Dear Justice League book. It's spectacular.
That's
it's
a good one.
Adorable.
Okay.
Your kids will love it, Dan. It's
right.
spectacular. And the story is bite-sized and perfect for like a 5-year-old to read or a 12-year-old. Like, it's just good stuff.
Okay.
And it's got a high reread value. A kid's not going to read it once and throw it away. They're going to come back to it.
Okay. I think that there's varying quality on those things for sure. And varying, it's more just the varying level of experience of those people. Like, I don't see veterans working on them, and maybe the page rates are just so low that it doesn't make sense to do so.
Steve Pugh is a 35-year veteran.
Okay, yeah. That's the exception.
He knows how to make a comic.
But I mean, this is the one that I have to write. Those are the types of talents that I want to see working on those things. So I have to give it a fair shake.
Yeah.
But they're not for us, Dan. They're not for kids. Kids don't give a shit about veterans.
No.
They don't care about
but they respond to great storytelling and great art like anybody else.
Come on, look at that. It's beautiful. That's Lost Carnival, the new one that just came out a couple weeks ago.
That one did great for me.
Yeah. And to be fair, Leef, Steve Pugh is really the outlier. He's like the one veteran. Who's been around a long time on these.
But they are hiring like really talented people.
Yeah, but he is great.
And that's what I'm saying is that if you're saying, yeah, but Dan, look at this one, I'm saying, yeah, we'll hire those kind of people for those kind of books. I think is what
we have never shown one of those books to a kid and they've gone, I don't like the art.
No, I know.
So, if we're recommending it, we get the right age group, hand it to them.
It's appropriate for the right age group too.
Yeah,
this is the Diana, Princess of the Amazons. Gorgeous book. Yeah, they're nice.
Okay, great. Well, guys, I'm all turned around on this. Look at me. literally judging the books by their covers, right? And I didn't, and I haven't dug in, and so that's a lesson to me. I'm gonna go out and seek out some of these books. I'm gonna go buy them for sure.
I think that's one of the problems. Is like a lot of like traditional comic store owners are not reading the books, and
I
so
agree.
they don't have the knowledge to sell them.
Right, exactly. Because these books that I showed you guys, I got these because I worked at a bookstore, not because I worked at a comic shop. You know, if you're a comic shop, you're lucky if you got a link to a digital advance copy so you could preview it.
No, DC sent those to us.
Oh, they did?
They did.
That's unusual because usually it's digital, I've noticed. At least with
DC bad. DC bad.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up DC. We're gonna get to we're gonna get to the money making stuff. I'm sorry, because man, Stu and Brian, they pay good money here.
Man, we've been waiting a long time for this.
And they've been waiting. But honestly, I value your industry chat more than anything. And frankly, if you guys want to come back anytime in the next few weeks and do a solo show for either one of you to drill into stuff, we can do that, because I shortchanged you a little bit. This was supposed to be all about tech, but it was just gabbing about comics again. But so let's go into some ManageComics stuff here. Brian, did you have some announcements? What do you want? Tell us a little something about what's going on in the future of ManageComics.
So the big thing that we're doing is we've really focused on not being the everything solution. We're a very, very small piece of the puzzle. We're managing subscriptions. We've got a partnership with a company called BinderPause, who is really, really heavily into the game side of the business, especially the CCG. And their POS system works hand in hand with Shopify. So we've basically built a tool, we're calling it Geek Fetch right now, which goes out and fetches all of the information from over 300,000 products that we have in our database and can match that up to the Shopify kind of format. Right now we're doing like a very limited alpha test of it just to make sure that all of the bells and whistles. It literally launched at 4:00 Eastern time today. So it's just in the very beginning phases, and we've got about a half dozen beta testers that are going to use it with us. But yeah, like that part of the business is really exciting, because what BinderPause does is they have a real-time CCG catalog, so they can take hundreds of thousands of CCG individual cards, and they have pricing and everything for those CCG collectible card game, right? Right. And then we're kind of tying into that with the comic subscription half it, which is really really exciting stuff. But then on top of that, we can just plug into any Shopify website. So now all of a sudden, all those guys that are out there that have just a regular website can convert to Shopify very quickly. And we're going to start working on just more deep integrations into the POS systems out there, like Square and Shopify.
Okay. So yeah, I've always thought of ManageComics, say, if you want to say versus ComicHub, I go, ComicHub is the all-in-one solution.
Yes.
Where ManageComics is sort of the a la carte. You can bring together multiple pieces and integrate your own way for a little more customization.
And we're like, I don't want to use this word cruelly, but we're simpler. Like it's a simpler solution. It's meant to be very simple. It's intended to handle the 90% of your customers who just want to subscribe to comics and forget about all the rest. When they want to do special orders on, variant covers and stuff like that, we have the ability to do that, but that's not front and center. The front and center is set it and forget it, and just have your subscriptions. And then I actually write a really detailed email every month about the new stuff that came out, and that goes out to all of our customers. So the store's customers. And that thing alone generates most of their new subscriptions, and they don't have to write that email because I've got 48 years of reading comic experience and 15 years of being a retailer experience. So yeah,
adding a little marketing addition on top of what they're doing. They're getting a little extra free marketing for materials from you.
That's right. And I make things look pretty. That's what I do. I'm the pretty guy. I gotta make things look pretty because I'm not pretty.
You can say that again, Brian.
That's right.
I wish I had been able to find. I know a few people that do use ManageComics, and I want to bring them in to get some fine testimony onto what it's done for their business as well.
Yeah, Brandon Schatz of Variant Edition has been talking on the chat tonight. He and Danica about some ManageComics stuff, which was kind of nice. You know, when you have two lovely ComicHub.
That's right. I know, dude. I stacked the audience against you, Brian, but I know you're tough enough to handle it, so that's all right.
That's all right.
By the way, I'm going to turn on the ability to see user comments, guys. So feel free to take a look. We're going to go into user comments pretty soon.
And I just want to say, like there's plenty of room for both Stu and I in this industry. And I think that each one of us has a slightly different niche. And I really, really respect the stuff Stu's doing. And I think having watched that last live stream you did with him, the stuff he does is really impressive. And I'm really impressed by it.
Thank you, Brian.
To me, it's a question of, like, some people have their act together more than others. Some people have a point of sale system they're comfortable with and they use and they like. The hardest thing is an online subscription management and payment system. When I was looking at opportunities and what I thought were gaps in the comic book market where I might write a piece of software, it was ManageComics, essentially. Right. Same idea, same concept, like fill that, because I feel that's so important. I thought, who is crazy / smart enough to tackle all the challenges? And then along came this Stu guy dude, he looked at not only the vision I had, but like he got even more crazy and started thinking, like, what do I do for publishers? And what am I doing for media people? And what am I doing? Like, it's a really fascinating system, but like, you're all in. If you're ComicHub, you're going to go all in and you're buying into that ecosystem. So Stu, let's pivot into that a little bit and talk about ComicHub for a second. What can we expect next? Like, if you're on the bubble thinking about ComicHub, but maybe there's something you're waiting for, like, what features could we expect to drop soon that will be like, that's going to bring that next wave of people in?
Well, we are relaunching our Android app tonight, which is kind of fortunate for the timing. We looked at a couple of months back. We're talking to all our clients, and I wanted to focus on making the online tools a lot smarter for everybody, because we were a point of sale system that had marketing attached to it, and we had a website that was allowing for all these functions as well. And our app was about 5 years old, so we pulled it to completely rebuild it, because the key feature that we found in the last few months that's really kept everyone going is the ability for customers to log in and pay for their asides as soon as they've arrived. So in my shop now, we get our shipment on a Wednesday morning. We process it. We have turned over more by the time we close at the end of the day than the shipment cost us, by people just logging into their website. So we're deploying the app with that ability as well tonight. And the app also comes with the ability for our retailers to target market. So they can put up comics that based on what previously people have purchased. And also for publishers, we had some publishers having a bit of a play with it in April, May, but the app is where everyone sort of wants those tools. So we're redeploying that after a good 3 months of complete retooling. Got put back an extra month because we all got sidetracked by DC, which was unfortunate. But that's the next thing we're dropping out, and then we will go back to adding that sell-through information that Milton at ICV2 has started reporting on as an industry total for the local stores, so they can look at the things that they could be selling better because that item sells better in their region. So it's all by zip codes as well as to what is actually selling.
Wow, really? It's local, it's zip code based as well? Like,
it is for graphic novels. So we supply data to MPD Bookscan as well. So they're getting the graphic novel information, but MPD Bookscan didn't want the comic information. So the comic information will be completely aggregated for the entire industry, whereas graphic novels, action figures and brands and things, you'll be able to drill down to your actual locale and work through with that. So that's the next thing that we will be moving our web team to. And then for our point of sale team, I always I now pitch this, our new logo, ComicHub, because none of us are smarter than all of us. So we have a really good retail forum where people are always coming up with suggestions and wanting help, and we're always looking at what they want us to do. So we're going to spend the next couple of months in the point of sale, just writing modules that our clients want as opposed to what I've said they've needed, and then we'll link all that to the web tools for the aggregated sell-through data as well. So yeah, it's going well, and we're really happy with where we're at. And same with Brian, there's no one wants to do all of it, and if nothing else, having competition keeps you on your toes, and it's a shame.
Oh man, big time. Like this is an exact example of like when there was no competition, those tools stagnated. There is no doubt there was no impetus to put the money into something like that. There was nothing. You guys are coming up with new features, getting feedback from your users, and bringing stuff out. When it's web-based, the way your stuff is, the cadence for new releases is so different than a fully like installed software. I know, Stu, yours is kind of sort of a hybrid system, so it's a little bit different. But still, I'm assuming that the upgrades appear sort of in the system over time. When you drop a new update, all your customers get that update. That's right?
Yeah, it's continually.
I think
guys, these are
the big difference too has been that like both Stu and I are tech guys who have a long abiding love of comics, so we understand that industry and understand all the peculiarities and idiosyncrasies of it, and also we're tech people, so it's very different than Diamond, who was a public distributor who hired a few tech people to come in and tried to explain how that stuff worked. This is in our DNA. So yeah, it's going to make a better product.
Well, and you got skin in the game, right? Like if your stuff.
I still have my shop. Yeah, I still have my shop. So every idea that comes up from our clients, it's always, that's going to make my shop make more money. Definitely going to do that.
And I mean, if your stuff doesn't work though, like if you wake up in the morning and there's a problem with ComicHub, like Stu, you got skin in the game. You got a store to run, not to mention all those customers relying on you. And same with you, Brian. You've got all those. How many managed comics customers do you have right now?
It's in the 70s ish right now. I've got I'm doing five new stores a week right now because of the Comic Suite, people wanting to get off of Comic Suite as soon as possible.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. And not to mention the comic book news effect.
Of course, yeah. This is the number one generator. It's not my amazing marketing automation that I've been building for the last couple of years. It's comic book news.
That might play a factor, Brian. Guys, any last stuff you want to talk about? This is the paid section. This is the plug stuff. But I want to know, what can we expect, Brian? Roll out new features. What's the next cool thing you can give us a sneak preview of?
We're always rolling out new features, but the main thing we're working on right now is Shopify integration, because once we have that, then we have two-way communication with BinderPause. So that's our most pressing thing that we're working on.
Okay, guys, that's how we make the money here, right? We sell that software. We're shifting bits. Okay, Stu, any other last plugs here before we go into user comments?
Sell what you got. If you've been around for a long time, you're going to get through these disruptions by selling what's in your store, and that's all our focus is really around making that easier for the customers that you've connected with various events and stuff, that if you didn't have a e-commerce solution, then we will help you get it up. I think we've got 550,000 items in our database with images and dimensions. And I'm gonna shout out to Travis at Current Comics up in the Bay there. That guy puts through probably 150 data tickets a day with cleaned up images and stuff. He's just making our data better and better and better all the time. So that's the other thing we do. We crowdsource between us to make our product better.
Yeah,
I was just about to say, the network effect, and then the more people that join in either of your systems, and then when you guys all get on the same page of reporting data into centralized places, then we start to get an industry with real-time, true sell-through numbers and actionable data for publishers and retailers and everyone.
Yeah,
you're making the dream happen, fellas, and I thank you for that. And guys,
I thought Stu made a great point earlier that it could help creators too, because all of a sudden you're going to have a lot more data on who people are actually buying as opposed to who the retailers are buying.
Absolutely.
So who knows? It could lead to better creator contracts down the line for some people.
Well, there's a whole creators and section of ComicHub as well, right?
Yep.
Stu, that's a whole angle you're covering.
Yes.
Yeah, there's the playlist feature that gives the consumer all to their creator liking. It's pretty sweet.
Oh, the other part, Timmy, that he's mentioning, the ComicHub.com has the ability. It's another tool we're working on for artists to actually sell their original art, attaching it to the item. So,
Wow, that's cool.
Manhattan Project's pages or the comic itself, the artist can then go and link the actual. So, if you're about to buy volume 1 of the graphic novel, Nick can list the pages that he's still selling, and they can look off that. So, that's that's something we're working on at the moment as well. We had it before we did the new sites.
Wow, really interesting. Stu, you're hitting all the angles, man, even more than other angles I have not even thought about hitting before. Okay, we're going to get right into the comments, guys, and then I got to scram out of here. So we don't need additional print. We need them to print more on demand. Thoughts on print on demand? Is that the future in any way? One thing I thought of is, what about serialized print on demand? Shaking your head. Tell me why it's never going to happen.
Where do you print it?
Yeah, it's not cost effective.
I just don't see where. Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool idea, but once you go into full color, printing is expensive, so you need to have a reasonable number hit.
I think the idea is to completely minimize, not have any stock sitting around on any shelf ever, right? It's a digital file, and if somebody wants a physical book, you print it out and you ship it to them. It's not a theory, it's a reality. It's happening today. I don't know price point and where the rubber meets the road for comics quality printing. I'm not sure about.
The quality is not there because it's still print on demand is still usually black and white books. I don't think you're going to get the 4-color process printing stuff.
It's gotten a lot better in the last few years, I will say. Kablam has indieplanet.com that is all print on demand single issue comics, and granted, the quality of the work itself is hit and miss. You have a lot of people who are, rookie creators, but you've also got a handful of established people who have put stuff on there. I don't know why, but Roger Langridge has a few books on there, and I ordered the print-on-demand versions and compared them to the direct market original printings, and they're pretty similar. They are black and white interiors, but the paper quality is a lot better than a decade ago. And the print quality is a lot better. Nat Girdler, who does About Comics, he has been doing it through Amazon. Rick Veitch of Swamp Thing fame has too, and their quality is actually fantastic for print on demand. So I think it really depends on the knowledge of the person who's doing that side of the business.
I don't think you'll ever get the prices down though to the levels that you got at when you're doing volume.
Never say never,
absolutely.
Brian. But yeah, I think that's probably the main sticking point right now. Is they're quite expensive for a full color, full length GN. It's going to be way more than you would get in a gang printing type scenario.
That's also something you want to be really careful about, because the only way you get it down to be cheap enough is that the actual machine is cheap enough for people to buy themselves. Yes. And then we're gone, people.
Yeah, that's true.
You just download your file. You don't go to your local comic shop. You just press a button and you print out the comics at home.
Right. Yeah. Oh, the end user, you mean, does the printing themselves?
That's the only way it gets cheap enough, right?
They 3D print it. No paper.
Yeah. That could be the end game someday.
They did that with greeting cards years ago, and it never took off. So
All right. So Heroinberg, by the way, who's got some comics? I've got some of Heroinberg's comics right here. We're going to be reviewing in a week or two. I got a mailbag show I've been trying to put together forever. She wants to know, was Black Label kaput? It wasn't varied lineup anyway. It was mostly just Harley Quinn stuff. I agree it was a mixed bag. We don't really know. We talked about that. Guys, any thoughts? What do you think of the future of Black Label?
No, it sells too well.
Yeah.
All the non-Harley stuff sells great. Question.
It's got a long tail.
Fantastic.
Wonder Woman Dead Earth.
Yeah, Wonder Woman Dead Earth.
Okay. Harley was fantastic. That one surprised me.
Yeah, but I think it needs an editor.
What Black Label means, the meaning of what that label means got a little bit mixed up. I liked it originally when it was sort of like a top shelf premium blend of creators, and now it's become more of a like NC-17 comics, if you will.
That's where they kind of like got my eyebrows raised on that one. Like having Black Label on the Sandman books confused a lot of my readers.
Yeah.
Like because they put it like when it was on issue 14, 15. And then like they put it on Strange Adventures. And it's not like, I think what really confused readers is seeing Black Label imprint, not on a book that was like seeing it on the standard format versus the Black Label magazine really confused.
Like White Knight, Batman White Knight.
Yeah,
became
dude.
Black. Yeah, that was weird.
Or All-Star Superman, the retroactive labels.
Yeah, that too was weird, man. That was really weird.
Yeah.
So Brandon Schatz, previous column, a panelist here and future regular panelist, says Heidi over at the Beat has a great catch-all article. It says that the intent is to actually embolden DC's position in the company, adjusting to where the market is going. He's talking about the pivot, the bookstore pivot, right? So guys, check that out. By the way, the Beat, you may not have noticed, is now an official sponsor of Comic Book News, and you'll be able to see our advertising over on Heidi's website and her advertising here on this website. It's not fun. Guys, more thoughts? Any more thoughts on this, or did we cover that topic well enough? Any other thoughts on this?
I actually got to go. I'm sorry. I got to get a live sale on CBSN.
Sell those books.
Good luck. See you guys. It was a pleasure. Good night.
Right, see you, man.
Yeah, Timmy.
Love that guy. Guys,
I read that Beat article earlier, and it is very thorough, and it is well worth everyone watching this to go back and read, I would say.
And it's linked in the comments, so it's somebody linked it in the comments too.
Okay, killer. That's why they need to sell off DC Comics. It doesn't fit into their profit portfolio. I guess they're talking about what, Warner or AT&T. I think that is as viable a scenario as any. I think you honestly could see them. I could see Disney making a bid for DC Comics, like for the IP property. It would be a lot of money, but frankly, I think they've got it. I think this is a realistic scenario.
Well, they had it pre-COVID. I don't know if they still have it.
It wouldn't surprise me if they partnered with someone the way Marvel has with IDW, not just to do, the superhero monthly books that are aimed at a slightly different audience, but also, the licensed collections and the artist editions and whatnot. Yeah. DC already does that with graffiti on the original art books, but I could see them partnering like with Dark Horse. I mean, DC and Dark Horse go back a long ways as far as partnering on projects. I was actually the assistant editor on the DC Dark Horse stuff for about a year on the Dark Horse side. And I think that that would be, that was one of your suggestions, I think, earlier, Dan. I think that is a realistic possibility.
Okay, let's see. We've still got more comments here. Let's keep going through the comments. AT&T, they're not investing any money. Here's that link, by the way. Let's see if this will work. I'm going to post that link to that Beat article, and that should work. We'll see. Maybe it won't. Hey, Brian, post the link. Hey, this is coming up. Here's a comment. This is a rare thing on Comic Book News. Here's a comment I think nobody will be able to argue with. Big time. I love it. Okay. Here's a link to Heidi's article. I'm just going to keep going through the comments here. I lost a lot of the earlier comics. This is the thing when we wait. John Jackson Miller also wrote one of the only books that came out of Marvel's second attempt at the Epic line with Crimson Dynamo. So this was in response to, John Jackson Miller's idea that, man, if DC were to license their characters, he sure would like a crack at them, and I'll bet you there's a lot of other good writers and artists and creators that would too. Let's see. Brian Garside, thank you for confirming those numbers. Oh, JJ says Crimson Dynamo is in fact a studio situation. I ran my own staff that managed that book. I was the idea behind the short-lived Epic model, and I really think that's more of the model that I think would be successful with licensed characters at DC, like small teams, like a return to the old studio system almost, but just on a book by book basis. Put a killer team on Justice League or some of those characters. I think it's possibly huge. Brian, what's this?
Oh, we were just in the chat. They were talking about the size of DC, and I was just saying it's about 200 to 300 people working for DC Comics. So that's where I got my $120 million back of the napkin math on the how much it was costing to run it.
Okay, we've got a lot more stuff here from talking about Tom Scioli. Just went on a hall crawl and got that Scioli goodness. Skipped to the page about him at Marvel immediately, of course. Really looking forward to the Tom Scioli interview next week. I thought that the Fantastic Four book, I looked at it too, and I thought it was really interesting. Those Grand Design books, really interesting format. Guys, what do you think about those? How did they sell in your stores? And if you've read them, Mike, have you looked at any of the Grand Design stuff?
I picked them all up, both as single issues and as the treasury-sized collections, and I love it all. My buddy Jeff York, who is the head Marvel researcher he's my main contact, but he's also a freelancer. He did all of the story notes in the backs of each issue. So what I loved about the Grand Design books is that you're not just getting a great comic story, you're getting all the background information that relates to that story. So I thought that was really smart of Marvel to entice people to go and learn more about the characters and explore more by going back to these footnotes and finding them, like the old Marvel indexes do, or even like their inside cover ads do. They say, here's the order you should read these books in, but those only list recent stuff. So I love them.
Hey, Sequential Geek asked about shipping. How's shipping costs work with ComicHub, Stu? Is that set by the retailers or what? How's that work?
It's at a retail level, yeah.
Is it on a per item basis?
Whatever that retailer's setting up, some of them have set up their own ways to do local, or they're plugging into the various, is it UPS APIs that we're using? Whether it's ever provided, yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Brandon Schatz again. He uses ManageComics. It's already helped our shop quite a bit. Highly recommended. There's our ManageComics shill, Brian. I got one of those too, man. I'll bring in ComicHub shills too.
I'm pretty sure that we got Brendan off of some Comic Suite stuff too, and it was terrible.
Speaking of Comic Sour, you're absolutely right about Comic Suite. I've had some good conversation with Diamond Tech person, but I know it's usually the exclusion to the rule. That program itself is a clunky thing. I know my local retailer here, who just shut down, by the way, thanks to COVID, one of them anyway, had nothing but bad things to say about the tech support he paid for and was really unable to access for Comic Suite.
Yeah, I know a lot of retailers have just stopped paying for the tech support for it because it's non-existent.
It just doesn't help. Okay, let's see. Customers, yeah, that's about it, guys. We don't have too much more in the way of your comments. There's a lot of talk about things like ink and zoom and the different imprints and stuff and the different sections. I just think I honestly think that the ink and zoom things were mistakes to begin with. I thought the rebranding of DC actually made a lot of sense in centralizing sort of their marketing efforts. But maybe, I don't know, it might be too little too late for DC. Target has a book section. Barnes & Noble has a book section. Austin has 2 comic book stores. Guys, there's so many options now of places to buy comics that aren't comic book shops. And frankly, you guys are great shops, or the people that are on the show and are watching the show are great shops, but you can go into a really large percentage of comic book shops, and I'll bet you're never going to see a lot of those graphic novels that we were talking about today.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I agree.
So that goes back to something that you talked about way at the beginning when you were talking about the numbers, and I had said this a couple times, that the numbers that are coming from Stu stuff are coming from that top 1% of like technically savvy dealers. So these are the guys that are actually doing a great job of, guys and girls who are doing a great job of selling stuff. So I think those are really, really valid numbers, because they're people who are actually doing the right things when it comes to the technology aspect of things.
I said to Milton that the sell through in our stores would be a higher percentage than the sell through in the average across
For
the industry.
sure. Yeah.
Because our clients are, the first thing you do is it just shows you what you should not be stocking, and it's in a graph there. Like, man, you've still got a heap of this. You're not making money. So we all, you give the customers the tools to make their orders straight away, and then your numbers become a lot tighter and closer.
Yeah.
It's amazing that just knowing what not to order, what a dramatic effect that has on your bottom line.
Yeah.
It can't be overstated.
We've got an FOC report, and when retailers look at their FOC numbers and they see this is what I've ordered, this is how many people are subscribed to them, that's sometimes a shocking number for them to see. And yeah, that's exactly why our guys are going to have higher sell-throughs as well.
What's amazing to me about this is that this isn't something that could have been done 30 years ago or even 20 years ago. I remember when I was a kid seeing those Overstreet Update magazines where you'd have the retailer reports in the front before the price guide. This is before even Wizard. And you just have retailers saying, oh, I sold this particular comic for this much in this condition. And it's like, well, that's great for, a few random data points. But what you guys are doing is so much more concentrated and so much more useful to more people that it just seems like the inevitable evolution of where the market has to go in order to succeed.
Yeah. Guys, man, sorry, Leef.
The people that are using these tools are really fans and knowledgeable about comics, where a lot of store owners are still just interested in superheroes. And that's a big distinction.
I think that gets into the point that, almost every comic shop is it's one shop owned by one person, not like a chain or anything like Timmy has. So you're going to have, a million shops with a million different ways of running their business. And they may not have another person that works with them to bounce ideas off of with a different perspective to say, hey, maybe this would work a little better, or maybe we should try things this way. But by having the software that can introduce, an outside level of factual data into the mix, I think that's going to benefit everyone. I think it's a rising tide lifts all boats. I think this is one of those situations.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Stu, go ahead, please.
That was always Diamond's attitude to ComicHub was, if you do well, then your stores are going to be better clients for us.
Yeah, I think Diamond really, in Diamond's defense, I think they realized a long time ago they were probably better served by encouraging an ecosystem of multiple tools and not being not pursuing that golden handcuff strategy, to their credit in that way. Guys, I've kept you here long enough. This has been a really long and interesting conversation, but I gotta wrap this thing up. I want to thank you very much. I'm probably not gonna have too much time. If you want to stick around, we'll chat a little bit, but if you gotta go, because I know I gotta get out of here too. So anyway, I'm going to bring you guys out of here. Stu, thanks for coming. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Good chatting to you.
Brian, thanks again. We'll talk to you soon. Leef, buddy, always a pleasure. Talk to you next time. Thanks for your input. Mike, thank you, pal. Always a pleasure to have you. You'll be back.
Thanks for having me.
You'll be back again and again and again. Thanks, Mike. See you soon.
Okay.
All right, folks. That's it, man. Still 54 people watching. That's a pretty good number for a stream like this because, we're not talking about, I don't know, X-Men or Superman or whatever. We're talking about the realities of the comic book business. Okay, we're not talking about the latest social uproar or the latest Twitter war or the latest he said, she said, this and that. Honestly, I'm just sick of that stuff. There'll be more talk about comics culture and all the things that are rocking our world in this industry and stuff like that. That's still something that I care about and I think is worth talking about. I've had a lot of personal problems going on, not problems, personal issues in my life in the last year, but who hasn't in 2020, right? Personally, I've had a lot of just death in my life and family in very recent weeks, in the past couple of days even. Meanwhile, I'm getting peppered with things telling me, Dan, you're a coward for not talking to so-and-so, or Dan, you're just a shill. You're enabling the most evil, like just the level of rhetoric, people, please, let's just calm it down a notch. I really don't care. I'm just going to say it one more time. If you got comics that you want to show me and you want to just talk about comics and leave all the garbage behind, please do reach out to me, man, because I want to talk to you. I want to talk to everybody about really cool and interesting comics. I just want to get away from the garbage and get into more fun. I promise, we're going to have some new, very fun types of programming coming to this channel in the not too distant future. I'm going to have an announcement about that really soon. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody, and I mean each and every one of you who watches and subscribe to this channel. Those of you who click that little bell, you get notifications. And hey, if you think about clicking that join button, what happens when you click that? Well, you're going to see multiple ways to give me money. And that money translates into ways that you can see your name on the screen when you watch comic book news. And one of those ways is in the credits. So I'm going to roll the end credits now. And, you know, people don't always read the credits, but on comic book news, it's worth sticking around because we've got post-credit cameos, just like any good superhero movie. So check them out. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
When I became famous is when I became Robin. You have to understand, I was a very naive kid. I was 20 years old. I came into Batman.
Holy serpentine, what happened?
I met Adam West, who immediately introduced me to the wildest sexual debauchery you could imagine.
Blindfold? To the Batmobile.
Within a few months, my marriage had dissolved, and Adam and I were like two hungry sharks in a world of unlimited halibut. Actually, I think Adam was more like a killer whale in a world of plankton.
Sometimes I think people expect too much of us, Batman.
They have a right to expect it.
But we're only human.
All too true.
We only have so much to give.
I must tell you, Adam and I have really partied very heavily. We got involved with probably 10,000 women. They don't call me the Boy Wonder for nothing.
I never, ever slept with 10,000 women and Bert at the same time. No.